And we'll now go to the third installation, and that is the Honourable Member for Essex.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll be using my time entirely for questions. Does the Liberal government still intend to issue a deferred prosecution agreement for SNC-Lavalin?
Honourable Minister of Justice.
Thank the Honourable Member for a question. I welcome her to the Justice portfolio, having worked a great deal with her in trade in a previous life, and respecting her work there. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chair, as I answered for the previous colleague, because there's ongoing litigation, appellate litigation in the matter, I simply won't comment.
Honourable Member for Essex.
Does the minister think that he was appointed as the new Minister of Justice and Attorney General because he's a Quebec MP and arguably more receptive to a DPA with SNC-Lavalin?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I have to admit I resent that question in the sense that I believe that my record in this House, my record as a legal academic over many years, would put me in a position to understand laws and apply laws and interpret laws in service of the Canadian public.
Member for Essex.
How many times have you met with SNC-Lavalin since becoming Minister of Justice and the Attorney General of Canada?
The Honourable Minister.
Since becoming Minister of Justice, never.
The Honourable Member.
How many times did you meet before with SNC-Lavalin before becoming the Minister of Justice and the current Attorney General of Canada?
The Honourable Minister.
As I had stated before the Justice Committee, Mr. Speaker, the lobbying record shows that I met once with SNC-Lavalin in 2017. I was that year the most lobbied Member of Parliament, according to the Hill Times.
Honourable Member for Essex.
How many times have you spoken to people outside the Justice Department about a DPA for SNC-Lavalin?
The Honourable Minister of Justice.
I'm a Member of Parliament and Minister of Justice. Mr. Chair, I have conversations all the time with people. People tend to give me their opinion, whether I ask for it or not.
Honourable Member.
Mr. Chair, have you spoken to anyone, through you, Mr. Chair, to the Minister, have you spoken to anyone in the Prime Minister's office or the Privy Council's office about a DPA with SNC-Lavalin since you became Minister of Justice and Attorney General?
The Honourable Minister.
As I had said in front of the Justice Committee, I had one informal breakfast meeting where it was one subject of amongst many at the very first Cabinet retreat with two members of PMO. And I had a usual briefing in the course of events, a normal course of events with the Department of Justice staff, where again it was one subject amongst many.
The Honourable Member for Essex.
Who were the PMO members that you met with?
The Honourable Minister.
I believe I'm on the record, and if I'm not, it was with Elder Marks and Mathieu Bouchard.
The Honourable Member.
Will the Liberal government call for an independent public inquiry into the SNC-Lavalin allegations that the PMO interfered politically in the trial, in the case? Yes or no?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Chair, I reiterate what the Director of Public Prosecutions has said, that she felt no interference from any any members of the government or political parties in the course of this affair, and I point to the testimony of my predecessor in front of the committee when she said that she felt that nobody broke the law.
The Honourable Member for Essex.
That didn't answer my question, Mr. Chair. I'd like to know, will the Liberal government call for an independent public inquiry into the SNC-Lavalin allegations that the PMO politically interfered? Yes or no?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chair, I repeat what I said before, which was my predecessor said in front of the committee that she felt nobody broke the law, and that Director of Public Prosecutions is on the record for saying that she did not feel any political interference or pressure.
Member for Essex.
Mr. Speaker, still not an answer to that question. I'll try once more. Will the Liberal government now call for an independent public inquiry into the SNC-Lavalin allegations? Yes or no?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I remind the Honourable Member that an independent officer of Parliament, the Ethics Commissioner, is undertaking an independent inquiry in the matter.
The Honourable Member for Essex.
It must be a no, but why won't the Liberals launch a public investigation into the SNC-Lavalin affair?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, as I've stated a number of times in the House and as others in the government have stated, we respect the institutions of Parliament. and parliamentary officers, including the Ethics Commissioner, who is undertaking an inquiry in this particular matter.
The honourable member for Essex.
Through you, Mr. Chair, does the minister think that Canadians deserve a public inquiry? Yes or no?
The honourable minister.
Mr. Speaker, as I've said, the Commissioner for Ethics, who's an officer of Parliament, who is independent, and who will produce a public report, is undertaking to do this.
Honourable member.
Mr. Speaker, on behalf of Canadians, they deserve an answer. Does the minister think that Canadians deserve the truth and that they deserve an independent public inquiry? Yes or no?
The honourable minister.
I think, Mr. Speaker, all of us on all sides of this House want Canadians to have the truth, and all of us on all sides of this House are endeavouring that Canadians have the truth. The Commissioner of Ethics is going to play a role in this matter. The Justice Committee has played a role in this matter, and other participants have made statements in this matter.
Honourable member for Essex.
Mr. Speaker, the minister seems to be having a difficult understanding of a yes or no answer. So I'll ask again, does the minister think that Canadians deserve a public inquiry? Yes or no?
Honourable Minister of Justice.
I've pointed out a public inquiry that is being undertaken by the Commissioner for Ethics.
Honourable member.
Public inquiry.
Mr. Speaker, there is no public inquiry that is underway. The Ethics Commissioner work is limited, and it is not an independent public inquiry. I'll ask once again, will the Liberal government call for a public independent inquiry into the SNC-Lavalin allegations that the PMO interfered politically? Yes or no?
The Honourable Minister of Justice.
Mr. Speaker, as I've repeated a number of times, Canadians obviously deserve the truth, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Chair, my predecessor has stated in her testimony in front of the Justice Committee that she did not feel anybody broke the law, and the Director of Public Prosecutions, Mr. Chair, has said that she felt no political interference.
Honourable member for Essex.
Obviously, we're not going to get an answer from the minister tonight on whether or not they intend to get to the truth for Canadians. So I'll switch gears. We'll talk a little bit about Ms. Jody Wilson-Raybould and her testimony. In her testimony, she said, quote, I experienced a consistent and sustained effort by many people within the government to seek to politically interfere in the exercise of prosecutorial discretion in my role as the Attorney General of Canada in an inappropriate effort to secure a deferred prosecution agreement with SNC-Lavalin. Through you, Mr. Chair, does the minister ever think it's appropriate for anyone in the PMO, the PCO, or any political actors to pressure the Attorney General about a particular case with respect to his or her prosecutorial discretion?
Just a reminder to all honourable members, the same rules of debate apply in terms of names of given or family names of other honourable members. The Honourable Minister of Justice.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, as I have said on a number of occasions publicly, I have felt no pressure from anyone in Cabinet or in the Prime Minister or the Prime Minister's office to exercise my powers of directing a DPA in this particular case. And if such pressure were to happen, I would immediately react. Mr. Chair, I can't speak for what my predecessor felt. I know that there are competing narratives out there.
Honourable member for Essex.
When the member for Vancouver-Granville testified at the committee, she described, quote, a barrage of people hounding her and her staff, end quote. What are your thoughts on that statement?
The Honourable Minister.
And that was certainly her statement. As I said, Mr. Chair, there are competing. I wasn't privy to any of those discussions or conversations, and I do note that there were competing narratives.
Member for Essex.
I believe the member from Vancouver-Granville. Canadians believe the member from Vancouver-Granville. Do you?
The Honourable Minister.
Again, Mr. Speaker, I can't comment. I can't comment because I wasn't party to those conversations.
The Honourable Member for Essex.
Do you think the member from Vancouver-Granville was telling the truth?
The Honourable Minister.
Once again, Mr. Speaker, there are perfectly compatible competing interpretations of events in which everyone is telling the truth.
The Honourable Member for Essex.
Once again, I'll try again. It's unfortunate I have to repeat the questions here and I'm unable to get answers. But do you think that the member for Vancouver-Granville is telling the truth, yes or no?
The Honourable Minister of Justice.
On a point of order.
Yes, I see the Honourable Member for Winnipeg North on a point of order.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, as you know, the same rules apply when we're not in committee of the whole, when we are, and the members should know better than to ask specifically to the member as you. All questions should be put through the chair.
I thank the Honourable Member for Winnipeg North for bringing this, of course, to the attention of the committee of the whole this evening. He's right, of course, the normal rules of debate apply. I ask honourable members to direct their comments and speech towards the chair and use the third-person form in the usual way that they do in the House. I think we're back to the Honourable Minister of Justice.
Once again, Mr. Chair, there are a number. I wasn't privy to the conversations in question, so I have no real way to evaluate other than to say that there are a number of competing narratives which are compatible with everybody having told the truth.
Honourable Member for Essex.
Okay. Through you, Mr. Chair, will the minister, launch an independent investigation into how Vice Admiral Norman's case has been handled?
The Honourable Minister of Justice.
Mr. Chair, as I've said a number of times in this House, the RCMP did its job in gathering evidence and initially laying charges. The prosecution service took on the carriage of the case, if you will, Mr. Chair, and eventually decided to stay the charges. I'm confident that our justice system, our investigative system, our prosecution system have functioned well.
Member for Essex.
Mr. Speaker, Vice Admiral Norman and his counsel, his lawyer, are not confident in that at all. So I'll ask again, since I didn't receive an answer that time, through you, Mr. Chair, will the minister launch an independent investigation into how Vice Admiral Norman's case was handled, yes or no?
The Honourable Minister of Justice. Mr. Speaker, the various institutions in question here operate independently of the Department of Justice. The RCMP in its investigative role, the Prosecution Service of Canada under the direction of the Director of Public Prosecutions. They have performed their functions independently of us, and I'm satisfied that the justice system in Canada functioned well to get to an appropriate result.
Honourable Member for Essex.
Mr. Speaker, it's quite curious to me that the minister doesn't seem to be able to utter the word no, although that's certainly what Canadians are hearing tonight from him. So, through you, Mr. Chair, to the minister, why did the Prime Minister comment publicly that the Norman case was likely to proceed to trial before it actually happened?
The Honourable Minister of Justice.
Mr. Speaker, again, Mr. Chair, I wasn't Minister of Justice at the time. So I don't know the exact timing of what happened, and I have no comment on it.
The Honourable Member for Essex.
Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chair, does the minister think that the Prime Minister should comment publicly on a case that it's likely to proceed before trial before that actually happens?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I can say, again, the Director of Public Prosecutions has stated on at least 2 occasions that there was no political interference in the prosecution or the carriage of the case and the decision to stay the case, and the RCMP is fiercely independent in its investigative role.
We're down to about a minute and a half. The Honourable Member for Essex.
Does the minister think that the Prime Minister's comments were appropriate?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, once again, there has been, according to the actors in the system who manage the system, the Director of Public Prosecutions and the RCMP, no political interference in this case in their view.
The Honourable Member.
Does the minister believe that the Prime Minister commenting on a case that's likely to proceed to trial before it actually happens is respecting the independence of the justice system?
The Honourable Minister of Justice.
Speaker, once again, these institutions in Canada are robust. We're very proud of them. The RCMP, the Prosecution Service is newer, but it was a welcome contribution from the Conservative government at the time. We think it was a good thing, and it's working well, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Essex, last question.
Does the minister understand that Canada's international reputation was tarnished when the OECD referred to the SNC-Lavalin case to their working group on bribery?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, once again, I take note of the honourable member's question. I am aware that the OECD said they would follow, but that's fairly routine procedure for the OECD to look at a number of different cases in a number of different countries.
Okay, that will conclude the third part of the first and opening round. We're going to